So how do I know when a drawing or a painting is done? Well, it's a good question because that's something I'm still trying to figure out. But I feel like a painting or a drawing is done when it looks good enough to me and I don't feel like I need to really add anything else to it. I don't know how else to explain it really, but I will try. I'll attempt my best to explain it. So I'm doing a drawing. Let's say I've been working on it for 10 hours and my expected time to be done with it was around that time, 8 to 10 hours. So I'll work on it that long. If it feels like I need to add anything else to it, I'll add to it. But there is a point where you start adding too much to your drawing to where it's overworked and there's just so much going on that the focal point of the drawing loses the focus of it. Say for example, if you're doing a drawing of a portrait, such as for example in this video, as you can see, if it'll focus, if my hand is closer to the video, the background is blurry. Now let's say you're drawing a portrait and the area that is close, such as the face area here, and the area around it here is blurry. So when you're doing the drawing of it, the portrait, you want this part of the drawing to be in focus. That's where you want the detail. You would want the outside edges blurry. Now, if I was doing a drawing and I started making all the area around it more detailed than the center, the focus, then it loses that the look of it which really captures your eye and draws you into that location. And so when you're doing the drawings like that, you don't want to overwork them. And when I start feeling like it's almost about to get overworked, I back off of it. I stop adding things. Now it's a little bit different with doodling or doing abstract because you can just keep adding more and more and more to it. So the bigger the drawing is, the less likely it can be overworked, in my opinion. Because if you've got like a little tiny sketchbook, it's easy to overwork that. I mean, like the little sketchbooks that I have that are about 6 by 4 inches, those I'm usually done with the drawing in about, at most, 2 hours. Like that's the longest I'll spend on it. And that's if I'm using my rotring isograph with the tiny little nib at the end of it. But most of the drawings take me about an hour. Now if I have a bigger sketchbook, I'll spend a longer time on that drawing. And that's one of the reasons why I moved from using a really big sketchbook to using a smaller sketchbook, is because I have more ideas, so that if I'm working on a drawing, I don't start combining all these different ideas and things that I have into that drawing. I'll work on a drawing, I'll focus on it, I'll get it done, move on to the next idea, create something new. And that prevents me from overworking. So find a sketchbook size that works for you. Find a size of paper that allows you to be creative and express your ideas on the paper without overworking everything. You don't want to have a tiny little piece of paper like this, where it's like 6 by 4, and you have all these ideas, but you want to get it all onto one paper. That's when you want to have a bigger piece of paper. Maybe do a huge mural or something. I've got huge paper rolls that I buy online to where if I wanted to, I could roll out the huge sheet of paper across the wall. I could draw on that, put all kinds of things on it, and then I don't really have to worry about overworking it, because it would take me probably months to finish the drawing, especially if it's like 6 by 8 feet. Well, 8 feet wide by like 6 feet high. So I would think that I can usually tell when I'm done with the drawing when the focus of the drawing that I want people to look at, if it starts to get where it's almost going to lose your eye being drawn into that, then I back off. I stop working on the drawing. But it kind of depends on what I'm making. If I'm doing something doodle and abstract, I usually finish when I've covered the entire paper from corner to corner with dots or lines or whatever it is that I'm making. It could be stippling, more of line art, or more three-dimensional or realistic, maybe perspective. But anyways, it depends on the size of the paper. That's one. It depends on what it is that I'm drawing. It could be abstract, or it could be a portrait or something realistic. That's another reason. Third reason could be it depends on the subject which it would be like, say for example, if I'm drawing something and it's not something that's going to take up all the corners of the paper, it would just be something in the center of the paper. An example of that would be if you're designing a tattoo or a logo. That's not something that you would usually have take up the entire sheet of paper. This is going to be in the center, or maybe start off from one corner and go to near the other edge. And so that's another reason. So it depends on what you're creating. If you're designing a tattoo, if you're doing abstract artwork, if you're painting, or if you're doing a portrait. Once you start practicing in a while, depending on how you create and what your artwork is like, how much detail you want to add and what you're creating, maybe if you're using colors, if it's just black and white, you will eventually find that as you keep doing it and keep practicing over the years, you'll find that point to where you know when to back off the drawing, when you know that you don't need to add anymore. And that's going to be different for everybody. And I've found that with my portrait drawing, as I said, if I put too much of the focus on the things in the background, but the focus is on the person, then your eyes are automatically drawn to everything but the face. The face is the last thing you would look at then. So if I'm drawing a portrait, as I said, put more detail in the areas that you want the eye of the viewer to look at first. And that's why if you look at the old paintings, the way that they would paint them, your eye is drawn to certain locations in the painting. For example, if somebody is standing there and they have their hand out and they're like pointing, or they have their hand up or something like that, the first thing you look at is the area that has to where it looks like movement or motion, and the area that has the most detail. And your eye is drawn to that, and depending on how they've done the painting, the colors and the lighting and the contrast, it's going to make your eye look from the point of where the hand is pointing or the person is looking at something. So in the painting, if they're looking at something, your eyes will be drawn to what they're looking at, and then the person that painted that was the goal of it. And so as you keep practicing, you'll learn to have those habits to make the viewer look at a certain location in the drawing, and then their eyes will be drawn to different locations in that. So that's a few tips I have, and my opinion on it, what helps me for knowing when I'm done with the drawing, or when I've gotten to a point where I don't need to add any more detail. So hope you found that helpful, and go ahead and let me know what it is that you'd like to do when you get to the point to where you don't feel like you need to add any more detail to the drawing or the painting or whatever it is that you're creating. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. We can have a discussion about that, talk about that, and if I can think of any other tips until then, I will go ahead and let you know. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and start some drawing and doodling, and have a good day. I'll see you later. Later.